Would you believe it's been 15 years this month since I first started training properly? By properly, I mean going to a gym, training with intent, week in, week out, without fail, planned rest weeks aside and other rest periods. I dabbled a little bit before joining a gym proper, bought a weight set, I think from Argos, and lifted sporadically in my parents' conservatory for like a second year of my when I was at college. I had to be super careful when I was lifting as well because we had like tiled floors and the weight plates I got were cast iron. I had these little squat stands as well, so I had to be super gentle and super careful not to drop anything and smash my parents' floor up. I think I did actually damage one of the tiles once. I'm not sure if my mum and dad ever found out because I covered it up with a rug. But yeah, that wasn't training proper. I mean, I was super haphazard that year. You know, I'd go really hard for like a week and then decide, oh, actually, I can't be bothered now, and I wasn't doing legs. So it was just my training was a mess. My training was a mess that year. It doesn't count. So I started training properly. It was September 2009, and it was on the inspiration of my then ex-girlfriend. It was her dad. He was all into bodybuilding. And it was him that actually told me to buy Arnold Schwarzenegger's Encyclopedia of Modern Bodybuilding. You'd keep it on the coffee table, and I picked up a copy a few years later. So I did act on that eventually. It's a bloody good book. You should pick it up. It's quite expensive. I think it was like £20, which I say it's quite expensive. It's not a fraction of expensive as most of my books, but I appreciate that's a stretch for most people when it comes to buying a book. I'm sorry, I'm digressing. So he got me into lifting. He got me into lifting weights properly into bodybuilding, and he introduced me to Don Styler's gym down in Gosport in Hampshire, which is a really really awesome institution. That's I believe it opened in the '60s. Believe, don't quote me on that, but proper old school gym. He introduced me to that place, and yeah, that's where the magic started to happen. It's where the magic started to happen. But I was reflecting. I was chatting with a client about various things, my obscene work ethic being one of them. But we got to talking about training as we do, and I kind of came to the realization as we were swapping text that had I started training today, as in what is it, 15th of September 2024. I started training from scratch today. I don't think that 15 years from now I will have achieved a fraction of what I have done in this past decade and a half. I just don't think it would have happened. And that's all other things being the same. So me being the same age, like 19, 18. Obviously, a 34-year-old man who's not trained and then all of a sudden starts training isn't going to achieve the same in 15 years as an 18-year-old who starts training. But so all other things being equal, I don't believe there's any chance in today's environment that someone starting out today would have an easy time as I had to get what I've got. Bottom line. Why is that? I believe it's to do with the fact that the fitness internet has changed beyond all recognition in the last decade and a half. So when I first started, it was mostly long form articles, message boards, Facebook groups as well, but the old style Facebook groups that were actually useful and you could have decent discussions and they were easy to navigate and things. There was a group I remember called Shut Up and Lift. I don't know if it's still on Facebook. I found that very useful. There were some awesome people I met through that group who gave me some advice and things. But yeah, YouTube. Oh, I wasn't big on YouTube back in the day, so I can't really comment. But as I say, most of the information came in the form of long form articles in places like bodybuilding.com, T Nation, and other sites. Independent WordPress blogs and Blogspot blogs, so kind of domain.blogspot.com, domain.wordpress.com, kind of little independent people with these free websites that they would build and share information on that were really easy to find through like a Google search. You would come up, nowadays you Google something and you just get junk in the search results. But back then, if you Googled something, you get awesome little websites that had a specific answer to your query, and then obviously you go down that rabbit hole, you subscribe to the blog, you check on the blog. You know, there was about 3 or 4 blogs that I would check religiously, 2, 3 times a week to see if they publish new content and consume that voraciously. Um, but the thing is with this long form stuff, message boards, is it's not conducive to just spending hours and hours and hours, consuming material mindlessly. You actually have to think, because it's the written word. You actually have to think, and it's detailed. At a minimum, we're looking at 600, 700 words. Potentially, some articles are reading were as long as 1,500 to 2,000, 3,000 or more. So the case case of publication as well, much slower, much slower. Because obviously, if you've got an individual creator, as they're called in today's language, who was putting out a thing on a blog, maybe they post once a week or once a fortnight. You'd have to read what they wrote carefully, probably multiple times before they publish something new. So you learnt more, you learnt better. And then there was the fact that the internet just wasn't as noisy. So you go onto YouTube now, and you just met with this gamut of fitness content. That's, I mean, some of it'd be silly of me to dismiss it all as nonsense, because it's not all nonsense. The stuff out there is not all nonsense. That's an easy argument to make, and it's incorrect. It's needlessly reductive. There's a lot of good stuff out there from a lot of very smart people. But the problem is the information's often contradictory, and whilst what they're saying is true and applicable in certain circumstances, you can fall into the trap of thinking that you need to do everything that you're shown. So you end up with hideously complicated training programs. You end up spinning your wheels because I need to do this mobility thing, or I need to do contrast loading, or I need bands and chains, and or I need to be wearing belts and straps and wrist wraps, and all I need to be, or I need to do a hypertrophy block, and then this block, and then that block. As I say, this stuff has application. It does work, but for most people who just want to be stronger and more in shape for their own sake and the sake of their family, it's mostly not needed. Mostly not needed. I mean, if you got a specific issue with an injury or whatever, well, first thing you should do is go and see a physiotherapist or a doctor and get proper diagnosis and follow their advice. But like adding some mobility drills or something to your training's not necessarily going. No one's going to make no sensible person's going to argue that's a bad idea. But when you start going really deep into this stuff, and you have all of these extra layers of complexity and bookkeeping and stuff, it's just not conducive to making progress. So let's go back to where I started. Let's pretend there's an 18-year-old lad, or potentially lass. Let's be diverse here. Pretend there's an 18-year-old lad or lass who wants to get into shape, starting now, and they're just hit with this tsunami of information, and quite reasonably come to the conclusion that they need all of it in their plan. Otherwise, they won't make progress. When actually trying to include all of it in their plan, or a lot of it in their plan, is the reason why they won't make progress. Instead, what they really ought to be doing is quadrupling down on basics, proper basics, as I did, as others who have succeeded did. Now, what are those basics? Well, firstly, most importantly, it's building confidence and competence in the core barbell lifts. What core barbell lifts? Well, they are your back squat, overhead press, bench press, deadlift, and their close barbell variations. So don't like back squatting, fine, do front squats, whatever, I don't care. Just as long as you're doing something in that ballpark. So getting strong on those lifts is the fastest and surest path to getting strong, looking good, being healthy. It genuinely is. I am amazed that there are people out there who would argue against that with a straight face. People who should know better. but strength is the prerequisite to getting any other fitness goal that you can think of, particularly when we're talking about untrained people, people who are just starting out in the gym, or people who've been dabbling for 6 months, a year or more, who haven't really got anywhere. Those people, they just need to get stronger, and the best way to get stronger is your core barbell lifts. Focus on doing them really well with excellent form, adding weight when you can, and just being patient, just waiting for that strength to go up. Because once you make those strength gains, a whole world of opportunity is unlocked for you. Things, your dumbbell and machine work will not only become more effective because you can lift heavier weights, which is obviously the most obvious benefit, but also the coordination, your ability to recruit muscle fibers and challenge the muscles more, isolate muscles more, mind muscle connection things. A strong mind muscle connection is a necessary thing to squat heavy, for example, or deadlift heavy, because if you don't, you just end up hurting yourself. And that translates over beautifully to assistance and supplementary work. uh, Best example of this I can think of is back when I first started training properly. I was very quickly put onto a program that focused exclusively on getting stronger in core barbell lifts. There was more variety to it than you'll see in like strong lifts or starting strength, because it was a bodybuilding gym I was at. So I've never been kind of a only squat, only bench press, only overhead press, only deadlift zealot. I think that's, I've used the phrase already, but needlessly reductive. But what I found was that when I subsequently went back to doing the dumbbell work and things that I was dabbling with before, it my body just responded to it in a completely different way. Completely different way. Not only did the muscle start getting added, but just the movements themselves just felt better. Just everything felt better. I was lifting with greater range of motion. I was more confident, even though the weights were heavy and they felt heavy. Like, they felt a hell of a lot heavier, but I was in complete control of them. Whereas before, I just wasn't, because my body hadn't kind of woken up. I hadn't made those initial strength gains. So that'd be the first thing. The second thing I would do is I would supplement that barbell work with modest amounts of machine, dumbbell, and bodyweight work, particularly bodyweight work. I wrote an email about this a little while ago, and in it I said that typically beginners do too little. Sorry, beginners do too much body work, and experienced people do too little. Now that sounds like I've just contradicted myself, and I suppose in a way I have. But what I mean by that is a lot of people who, when they first start out training, they will train at home and they'll do some mixture of kind of like air squats, push-ups, and pull-ups. That will be all they'll do. They won't go to the gym. They won't lift weights. That's bad. We don't want to do that. If you're serious about getting strong and in shape, then we need to be going to a gym or buying a gym and putting it in our house and lifting weights. That's something we need to be doing. Um, but you don't want to do away with the bodyweight work altogether. So things like chin-ups, if you can manage them or work towards them. If you can't manage them, you need to work towards them. Push-ups, dips, bodyweight squats, single leg work, that sort of stuff. That will massively support the barbell work that you are doing in the first instance. And the reason I say that is that when you're new, you're not really strong enough to do like really productive volume work with a barbell. So if you're only squatting, just put my finger in the air and pick a random example, like 60 kilos for a set of 5. You're back squatting 60 kilos for a set of 5, right? There's not, for you to back off and do sets of 10 to 12 that you need to do to kind of build muscle, grease the groove, learn the movement pattern, that sort of stuff. You could do it with 30 kilos or just the empty bar, 20 kilos, but in my opinion, you'd be better off like hammering bodyweight squats and hammering single leg squats and stuff like that for the volume, because you'll be able to do more reps and you will also generally use better form. You're learning how to bodyweight squat well translates well to being able to barbell squat well too. It's just the kind of the basic movement pattern. The risk of you hurting yourself is a hell of a lot lower. That's a biggie, particularly for people who are a little bit older. So yeah, bodyweight work and as I say, modest amounts of um, dumbbell and machine work. I do would do dumbbell and machine work in this context for areas of your body that are obviously lacking. Yeah. So obviously, if you're relatively new, you're going to be lacking everywhere. But it quickly once you start doing the barbell stuff, you quickly learn what muscle groups on your frame are strong and what ones are weak. What ones are weak? Is that good English? I don't know. I don't care. Whatever. It's Sunday and I'm tired. I've got a cold. The For example, again, use myself. I've got boulder shoulders and arms. I think one of the first compliment that was ever paid to me about my physique, which I will remember till the day I die, because I was a fat little bastard when I first started training, and I've been mocked for my body my entire life up until that point. There was an older bloke at the gym, and he went, "Oh, you got lovely big arms, you have." Because I did. I had great arms, and my shoulders too were great. But the downside of that was that my chest really hadn't developed at all, and it took me about a decade to really get on training my chest properly because my shoulders and arms are just freakishly dominant, right? So if you have that disparity there, so say like you're like me and your shoulders and your arms grow but your chest doesn't, or your chest grows but your shoulders and your arms don't, or your quads grow but your hamstrings don't, and so on and so on, you typically would focus your supplementary work with dumbbells and machines on those weaker areas. Do to do kind of light work for higher rep sets, 12 to 15 reps, 20 sets of 12 to 15 reps, maybe 20 or more. Just really focusing on contracting those muscles, creating that mind muscle connection to give those lagging muscles the attention they deserve. That'd be the second thing I would do. The third thing I would do would be plenty, and I mean plenty, of cardio. So people who get into weightlifting typically get into weightlifting because they don't like doing cardio because they're lazy. That's just the way things are for most guys. That's why when you go into most weight rooms, the guys are fat. The guys are fat. Chaps who are renowned for doing too much cardio typically know this, and they tend to scale it back appropriately. This is basically if you're the sort of person who's already doing like multiple 5Ks a week and all that good stuff, you can just ignore this part because it just doesn't affect you. I'm talking exclusively to the people that know they need to get in shape and have chosen weightlifting because they don't like running and cycling and all that other stuff. Talking to these guys, yeah. And cardio cardio won't kill your gains in the gym. It just won't. Um, in the very first instance, because of how unadapted your body is, doing things like cycling and running may actually help your lifts go up. It does happen. When I had my little gym, I actually observed my own mother that getting her to go cycling made her deadlift go up. Just did. She was she was an older lady. I think she was in her late 50s at the time, and we had to be very careful with how much weightlifting we did because of various like medical problems that she's got. And what I said to her, I was like, oh, just start cycling more because it was low impact, it was fine on her joints, that sort of thing. And lo and behold, she ended up putting 5 kilos on her deadlift just by adding in some cycling and nothing else changing in the program. It's pretty cool. I'm not saying that works. I'm not saying if you're already deadlifting 140 kilos or go for a bike ride, your deadlift will go up. Obviously, that's not the case. You need more specific training, but certainly for people who are beginners. But what you absolutely will benefit from is building an almighty gas tank that will enable you to do things like handle higher rep sets. It will enable you to do more sets in the same or less amount of time to increase your training density. It will reduce the time you need to recover between sets, so you can increase density that way. It's it is a secret weapon for massively increasing the efficiency and effectiveness of the stuff you do in the weight room. Just is. The other thing as well that is perhaps obvious, you start doing cardio, you're going for walks, doing some running, doing some cycling, that sort of stuff. You're gonna get leaner, all other things being equal. Well, subject to the obvious caveat that you can't eat like a degenerate walrus. If you're doing that, then you're just gonna get and stay fat, aren't you? Probably get fatter. But provided you're paying a modicum of attention to your diet, which you should be, and if you need help with that, I suggest you consult with a registered dietitian. Certainly don't go listening to PTs and things who are not qualified to advise on diet in any meaningful way. If you've got genuine issues with diet, go see a dietitian. But I think if you're listening to this, you're smart enough to know what you ought and ought not to be eating and kind of roughly what quantities of that. So just do that. Be smart, be sensible, don't be a degenerate. Do your cardio and probably get a fair bit leaner. Not dramatically leaner. That requires all sorts of naughty juice, but certainly a bit leaner. And who doesn't want that? Oh, and the last one as well about the cardio is energy levels. It's a bit of a twee thing. It's often used in fitness marketing, particularly marketing that's aimed at like executives and busy professionals. Or busy professionals is that doing your cardio will massively help you with energy levels throughout the day. So it's quite normal for when you start doing regular cardio properly, i.e., not too much of it, that things like mid-afternoon crash just go away. Like you wake up, you feel okay, and then you feel okay throughout the day. You're not bouncing off the walls here. It's not, it's not like a drug or something. But so I'm not going to sit here and pretend you'll be like the Duracell bunny, but you won't feel bad in the afternoons so much anymore. The mornings, you just kind of feel like flat throughout the day, which is pretty good. So to give you again, use me as an example for the third time now. I wake up, I feel okay. Come lunchtime, I feel okay. Afternoon, I feel okay. Bedtime, start to feel tired, go to sleep. Do the same thing again the next day. I quite like that. It feels good. When I didn't do cardio, that absolutely wasn't the case. I was, falling asleep, nodding off in the middle of the afternoon, which is a real problem when you work for yourself because you ain't got a boss to hold you accountable. And then, all right, so that's the third point. The fourth point, fourth basic, is mobility and stretching and stuff, which is fairly obvious, but just basic things like warming up and cooling down from exercise. Most people don't do it, or they spend 3/4 of their workout doing it. Neither of those approaches is sensible, you know. Just so have a look into some warm up protocols, cool down protocols, and start putting them into your training and profit. All right, good. So those are the four things that I would do with my training to combat this information rich environment that is not conducive to sustainable success. The last thing I would do is curate my environment. So I'd be very conscious about how many people that I'm actually listening to. I condense it down to a handful of people, authorities that talk on training, ideally ones that complement one another, so they're not contradicting each other. Obviously, in my biased opinion, I believe that I am one of those people that you should be listening to. And if you've gotten to 23 minutes and 4 seconds into this podcast, then you're probably pretty happy that I'm the sort of person you want to listen to. And if that is the case, now is the time for the plug. I suggest if you're not already, you should be subscribed to my daily emails, which you can get via the link that's on the screen, philtyman.co.uk/report. There is a bribe in it for you in the form of my report called How to Build Muscle and Strength the Natural Way. I sell books too, philtyman.co.uk/books. They're very expensive, so get yourself on the email list. Make sure you like my writing style, my way of thinking and doing things before you purchase one of those books. And of course, you can work with me as well, philtyman.co.uk/program. But just like with the books, don't pay for that until you're sure you like what I'm about. And the only way that you can find out if you like what I'm about really is by reading my emails and stuff. So get on the list. philtyman.co.uk/report. And if you like the video, subscribe to the channel if you want to help me out. I have 8 subscribers at the time of recording. Let's get that into double digits, guys. Get it up to 10. All right, that's enough. I'm done now. See you next week.